So my name is Tammie Benham. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm the Youth Services Consultant for Southeast Kansas Library System. I'm going to give you an overview of genrifying, specifically for picture book collections, but some recommendations for different collections if you're thinking of expanding genres into different areas. And then we're going to hear some practical tips and observations from three librarians out in the field who agreed to join Jason, myself, and Kim Burns on a committee to come up with some guidance around genrifying in the SEKLS system. So Kathy Hill from Savinburg, you want to wave, Kathy? Christine Inman from Madison, and Diane Kukar from Moline will all be chiming in after I give you a little overview of what in the world genrifying is, so that you can have a better idea of what we're talking about and where we're going with this. I took a picture of Sabrina a while ago because she just was cracking me up so bad. So I loved that, and hopefully I'll be almost as entertaining. No, don't even count on it. It's not going to happen. So right now you should be seeing my PowerPoint. Can you see that? Okay, we're good to go. There is a handout available. It will be in the same folder, but if you want to follow along as I go through this presentation, here's a link to the handout for this presentation only, not for our guidance document, which is not finalized quite yet. So first I want to talk a little bit about what is genrifying. Generification could be defined as a specific approach to library collection organization. So it's kind of like how you put things on the shelf. But this one is based on reader interest. So instead of using Dewey or Library of Congress or some other organization system, people are using genres and dividing their collection up into different genres to place them on the shelves together. So again, this one specifically is guided by reader interest in the classification. So a lot of pushback that we get is this is not a standardized system. And you're right, it's not a standardized system, but arguably all cataloging is subjective. Catalogers make subjective decisions all the time. They try really hard not to. They want someone else, they want to look for a record that someone else has already done and already made a decision on where to place that record. But I put an example up here for you. This is a book about Ernie Barnes, who was a football player, and later on he became an artist and a very well-known artist. If any of you are old enough to remember Good Times, the show, it was his artwork that was displayed in the home of the Evans on their walls. And he did these amazing, beautiful pictures and became quite known for that. So is this a book about an artist? Is this a book about a football player? Is this fiction? Is this nonfiction? Is this picture book biography? Whenever you're cataloging, you have to make those decisions. And there is no right and wrong. This is a book about all of those things. And we're going to give you some tips about where to place this based on where it might be found in your collection. So stay with us. I thought I'd talk a little bit about what are the pros and cons of genrifying your collection. And I looked this up and compiled a bunch of pros and cons from different presentations. So I want to talk through this with you. So what gentrification does is it helps children at the root. It helps people, I put children on here, but it helps people find the right book. So it's an attempt of a library or a librarian to simplify that process of finding the right book. It provides strategies to find reading material that they enjoy. So I know as a children's librarian, when children came into my department, they would say things like, where are the princess books? Where are the books about trains? Where are the Lego books? So by being responsive to how children are searching for books, that is how we're allowing them to find the reading material that they enjoy. Because now, instead of this subjective system of putting everything on the shelf by author's last name, so you might have a train book under A and under Z and under Q and in all those different areas. Now all the train books, the books about trains, are together. So think about it that way. Because your patrons then are able to find more of what they're interested in, it leads to more reading. And we know if you read more, your reading ability increases. So if you think about kids who are developing reading skills, this is a good thing for them. It encourages them to have confidence in their ability to find materials and their ability to read. And it also encourages your patrons to make peer-to-peer connections and recommendations. So if two children are playing and one of them is very, very interested in the block building that they're putting together, then one of the other kids might say, hey, let's go look at these books and to get some more ideas. Or maybe you suggest that. We have a whole section on building that you might be interested in, or on blocks that building that you might be interested in. And so you take them over there and then they can get ideas that way. So it kind of expands how they're thinking about literature and the usefulness of the books that are in your collection. So it also helps some children in school settings to find books that they're required to read across genres. So many times teachers will say things like, you're required to read a picture book biography or a biography, or you're required to read a nonfiction book on that subject, or one of each. And so if you have genres that are set up in this way, it helps students to find that material easier. You can identify, well, your patrons can identify and articulate their own reading preferences. So they're able to say, I really like this section, and go right there. Instead of stopping and having to ask and having to wait for you to serve the person in front of them, or for their mom to have that conversation with you first. They know where to find things, so they can go right there. And it also helps them find read-alikes. So if you have different authors, you know you have that one author in your collection that never circulates because they're probably stuck somewhere in the queues, and kids see. It's just like when you're at Walmart, it's that suggestive selling thing, right? So they see the books in the A's first, depending on how your collection is set up, or maybe the M's, but they never find the author whose last name starts with Q. And that's not someone you've had on display, even though you know that front facing will get books checked out, right? So if you put them all together by genre, then they're able to really look at read-alikes and explore your collection more thoroughly. So here's some more pros. And I wanted to talk a little bit, excuse me, about this graph. This is a graph that I created when I was librarian in Joplin, and after I did my picture book gentrification. So I did over 5,000 books, right? And then I looked at, after we moved, what did my circulation look like? So if you look at this, you'll notice that overall library circulation went up 28% when we moved into a new building, which you kind of expect because it's a new building, everyone's curious, everyone wants a library card at that point. The children's department circulation overall went up 39%, which is significant. The picture book collection was the only one that I genrified, and I put it in front-facing bins, so front-facing shelving, and it increased 56% over the first year. So I can absolutely attest to this has that impact. This strategy has that impact to increase circulation in picture books. Questions so far? Okay, let's look at some more pros. So there are some pros for librarians as well. This really provides you an opportunity to discuss genres with students and to demonstrate what other different genres are. We have someone with the ability to write on the screen. Jason, are you seeing that as well?
I do see that.
I'm not sure what that's all about, but pretty cool. Someone always is looking at the buttons, right? Someone out there pushing buttons. But it's able to allow you to have that conversation and to introduce a new concept, a new vocabulary. What is a genre and what are these different genres or different places where you can find books? So you can have that conversation with them so that you can enable them to find their own material when they understand your organizational scheme. It can give you, and Kathy's going to talk a little bit about this, I hope. It can give librarians a new perspective on their collection and really look at what are your strengths and where would you like to build up your collection. So by physically arranging your collection differently, you'll be able to see that. It can show which areas are in high demand in your collection and maybe some that need to be promoted. So if you know you have a really nice collection of cowboy and cowgirl books, cow people is what I call them, but they're not circulating, maybe you need to do a display on that or have some kind of programming around that subject with the display so that you are more promoting what you have available. And maybe one of the authors is local, which is always a big draw, right? Well, sometimes a big draw. It can provide librarians with statistics on collection use by genre. So if you know that you have train books that continuously circulate, which you will, then you know that when you are doing your collection development, that's an area, whenever there's a new train book out, you're going to want to add that book to your collection because you know it's the likelihood that it will circulate is pretty high. And there is a new train book out. I believe I said it over here. Let me check. Oh, I didn't. I'll share that resource with you later. It was a really good one, and I want to make sure that everyone knows about it. It refreshes the look of your library and relocates your authors. So, like I said before, those authors that don't get found very often, and we all have them hiding in your collection, it doesn't mean that their material is not as good as some of the other authors. It just means sometimes that there are authors that are known and kids get used to going to the C's for Clary and they never look in other places for books that even though another author may be just as good or could expand their knowledge or the use of their collection by being read and writes on the same genre or in the same genre, they aren't found because that other author is the one that they know. So by putting like things together, then they're able to expand their use of your collection and they're able to see what all you have on that genre or on that topic. It can really refresh the look of your library. So the first thing you're going to do is weed, and I'm going to get into process here in a minute, but even just weeding really refreshes the look of your library. I know Diane's going to talk a little bit, and when we were in Moline weeding her collection before she did went live with Koha, we had some board members there helping us box up books as we were weeding. And they were commenting on, oh, I haven't seen that book forever. Well, I forgot all about that book. I forgot all about that author. And guess what? The board members were checking out the books that they could now find. It really refreshes the look of your library just to make sure that you have a tight collection, a clean collection, and it's well organized on your shelves. This could provide a focus for book club discussions or activities once you see what's really popular, or maybe you see something that isn't really popular, but you want to reintroduce that collection, then you can easily find the books that have to do with those genres and put them on display or allow them to be checked out as part of this book discussion or encourage them to be checked out as part of this book discussion. And as we talked about, it can really increase your borrowing and your circulation. as with most things, there are some cons that go along with this. This is a big project. Whether you have 5,000 plus books like I did, or if you have a couple hundred books, it's still a big project. And I know not everyone works 40 hours a week, and not everyone is open multiple days in a row, and it can be a big project. But how you chunk it up and how you think about it in your mind, if this is something that you think would benefit your library, let's talk about how to arrange your time so that you can accomplish what your goals are. So, but it is a big project to undertake. Assigning genres, labeling, cataloging, your signage, your physical arrangement, then also leading your users or your patrons through these changes, because you're going to have pushback. And some of the biggest pushback I had was from teachers who were retired but went back into the schools to read books to children, would come into the public library to check something out in order to read to the children. And when they went to the shelving, they were like, what is this? I can't figure this out. I don't know where to even start. Where is this author? They're all supposed to be in the A's. What's going on? And so it takes some time to walk people through what it is you did with your collection and why you did it. And in order to do that, one of the things that we recommend through our committee, and I myself recommend, is making sure that you have a bookmark, a brochure, a poster, something that you can refer people to so that it gives them an idea of why you did this, what you did, and where they can find the material that they're looking for. And then, of course, you're always going to be available to help them search your OPAC whenever they need to, so that you can then help them find exactly what they're looking for. Another con is sometimes it's difficult to assign a genre, just like we talked about with the first opening example. And you're going to have to pull up your big girl panties and strap on your boots and just make that decision. And sometimes you just have to make a decision. We do have some guidance for how to make the decision on where to put the book and which genre, but it'll be on you. Now, having said that, this is not like surgery. If you cut something away and never grow back, right? That isn't it. You can take the label off and reassign it if you find out you made the wrong decision. It's okay. And just giving yourself that grace to understand this is not a perfect system. This is a very imperfect system, and it's very subjective based on the person that is assigning the genres. But you are in charge of this, and you will have to make those decisions. Another thing that trips people up is authors don't always write fancy Nancy. You know, they don't always write in one genre or about one topic. Think about DiCamillo, and she writes across multiple genres, right? You really are going to have to get over all the books by that author are in one place, okay? There are some exceptions to this. We do recommend keeping series together. So keeping the Dr. Keeping all the Fancy Nancy's together, keeping all the Thomas together. And that you'll see that in the recommendation that we put out. But just be okay with the author, if they write in different genres, placing the book in the genre. And don't worry about keeping all the author's books together. And I mentioned a little bit about the resistance to change from some library users. Questions so far? Okay, we'll go on. Let's talk a little bit about the process. So I mentioned that W word already. The first step is weeding your collection. So you want to weed your collection because you don't want to do a bunch of work to a book that you're just going to pull out and put on the sale bin, right? Or recycle, not discard, recycle, because it's a lot of work and you're going to have plenty to do. So make sure that you weed really well. Jason will come and help you weed if you need help. I'm unavailable for the next few months. After weeding Delina, I know that Deanne is in the room, so she'll appreciate that reference. Then we get to the part that Kathy loves the best. You have to choose and purchase your labels. Now, we recommend you use a color coding system as well to help identify which genre is what color. And you'll see that in the guidance document that we'll share with you when it's finalized. But we want to make sure that we're using multiple indicators for the different genres. So we might say nature is one of our genres, but we also might pair it with green, the color green, so that children who aren't really ready to read yet can still find nature books by knowing, oh, those are the green books. I'm going to go look in that section because that's my favorite section. So you're going to have to find your labels, and they can be expensive. There are some tricks for getting over the expensive labels. You can do things like use a highlighter or use a marker or use colored pencils with a clear label protector over your label. But you're going to have to find and purchase the labels that you want to use. Make sure you're buying a label that is easily removed so that hopefully it'll be 2 years before you change your labels. Or before you decide you're going to discontinue one genre and put your books somewhere else. But whenever you take that label off, as Kim would tell you, you need to make sure that it comes away clean so that you're not tearing up your book if it's still a book that needs to stay in your collection. Also, if you're switching to front-facing bins or baskets, you'll need to carefully measure your shelving, and the books need to and your books to determine purchasing sizes and amounts. So I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, just a little bit further. But picture books are notoriously huge in some areas, so you may have some that will never fit in a bin that you buy at the Dollar Tree. And I know many people can't afford front-facing shelving, and so they do buy bins from Dollar Tree. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's the way you want to go, that's great. If that's what you can afford, that's great. You're being responsive to your patrons by putting your books face forward, but just understand that you are going to have part of your collection in your picture books very likely that won't fit in bins from the Dollar Tree, and you'll have to find a more specialized item or have a different system. You might have to combine your systems and have spine out and face out. So keep that in mind when you decide to organize your collection. You're going to want to run a report on your collection to determine the number of labels you're going to need. So you need to know how many books you're going to relabel and buy at least that many labels, and probably that plus another quarter. Because you're going to add to your collection, but also just in case you make some mistakes or the printing goes wonky, because it's a printer. Then you're going to remove your books to a cart, one shelf at a time. I don't suggest that you take all of the books off the shelf and then stack them up. Just take a few at a time and put them on a cart, decide which genre they go in, and then you can proceed. Then when you're deciding which genre, remember you're going to really think about where will this book be likely to be found or read. Okay, so if you have to make those tough decisions, is this a football player or this is an artist, maybe you have another section that's picture book biography, and you stick those kind of books that are about people that have had multiple paths in life that they've followed into picture book biography. So think about that when you're setting your genres, and also whenever you're deciding where they belong. And also one way to really consider it is, if I took the genre out of the book, I could take the football player out, it would still be a decent book. I could take the artist out, it would still be a different book. But if I took picture book biography out, it really is the identifier for this book. It's one of those decisions that you'll just have to really get used to. Then you're going to label your books. You're going to do this. You're going to change the call number in Koha. Or Jason is working on ways to batch modify call numbers and batch modify printing labels from Koha. And you're going to want to talk to him if that's something you're interested in doing. And you don't want to do it 5 books at a time or 10 books at a time. You want to do it all at once. Talk to Jason, who has permissions, and you are locked out of there, and he has to give you the key in order to do that, which means he's going to be eagle-eyeing what happens, because we want to make sure that we keep our system really clean and well. You like that? I'm watching it. I'm watching. So then you're going to relabel your books. And I put some labeling examples on here because it's hard to imagine what I'm talking about. I know this is the labeling system that we used. So I determined that one of my genres was nature. So, and it was green. All right. So that's the big F with the green label that says nature. Then behind that, and this was our cataloging person that determined that this was the best way to do this, and I was fine with it. So we really had 2 labels on this book. It says the genre, which is nature. We had subgenres, which we are recommending to you in our guidance document, but you will get to determine the subgenre. Okay, so the genres like nature, like nature in this example will be set for you so that we can keep continuity across SEKLS Koha system. Okay, so we have genres that are set. You will determine the subgenre based on your collection. Okay, so I had a lot of books that had to do with ponds, so I chose pond as my subgenre. Then the author's last name, Fleming, her first name, Denise. You do not have to, of course, you still retain control over what you put on your label. This is how I chose to do it. And then the big F stands for Fleming. So whenever I went to put things on the shelf, I would look for the color green, which was nature. Then I would put all of the pond books together under nature. And then I would shelve by author's last name, which in this case was Fleming, started with an F. Okay. For board books, I used a very similar system, except I didn't worry about whether or not Fleming went before or after Fierro. Just all the F's were together. So all the greens were together. And then we just looked at the big letter on the label and put them in alphabetical order. It made it a lot easier for the pages to find board books whenever there was an interlibrary loan, or when there was a request for one of the board books. They didn't have to dig through the giant tub or the giant swimming pool to find the books and possibly get bitten by a brown recluse and find a dirty diaper and somebody's sticker or whatever. It really gave the collection some authenticity and gave it some importance to children because their books were on the shelf as well. And was it easy to keep them in the right order and keep them neat? Yeah, it was, because first of all, you're going to color code, and then you're going to use your ABCs, and that was as easy as it got. And it also is another way for kids to see environmental print. So kids that are using board books are usually learning their ABCs. And so this was another way for parents, and many of them said, okay, let's say our ABCs, and they'd walk down the aisle and say their ABCs and point at the books. So I wanted to give you an example to show you what it is this could look like whenever you relabel. After all your books are relabeled and the call numbers are changed in Koha or whatever system you're using, then you're going to calculate the shelf space you need. You can get a good estimate for shelf space by multiplying the number of books in your collection, which you ran that report before, and multiply that by 1.25 inches. And what that's gonna do is really leave you lots of good room at the end of your shelf, so you can do some front facing as well. And you can also grow your collection. And so that assumes that 1.25 is the average size of your book. Okay. You're going to map where each genre will be in your library on your shelves. I suggest you map this out ahead of time so that you know, okay, I need 5 inches for the A's, I need 4 inches for the B's. Map it out so you know, so that whenever you do get ready to put all of those new books on the shelf, that you know where things are going to go and pretty much can tell what's going to fit where. So you're not going to move everything as soon as you get it changed in Koha. You're going to wait and put those books back where you got them, right on the shelf where you got them, and wait until you're completely done with all of your relabeling before you get to rearranging. Order is vital, as you know, to being able to easily find books. So if you're using baskets, how many will fit on your shelf, and what's going to be in what basket, and make sure that there's room to flip. So you don't want to wedge them in there so tight the books can't be flipped, because that's the whole point of having front-facing books, so that you can flip through them easily. And you don't want to wedge the baskets on your shelf so tight that when someone pulls the basket off to look through the basket, the other basket then falls off onto the floor. So make sure that you keep those things in your mind when you're measuring for shelf space. Once you have a plan and you're done with your relabeling, then you're ready to move your books. So it's going to take a while, especially if you're only doing this a little bit at a time, to move your books. This can be done all at once. You can close the library, come in on your day off. No, I'm not suggesting you do that, but you can get this done depending on your collection size in 1 or 2 days. Once everything is color coded and labeled, you know where it's going to go because you have a map. Moving the books is the easy part. Easy as pie, right? Oh, wait, we forgot. Make sure you create signage and it's consistent with the wording and the color. So if I say on my label, people is this magenta color, this bright pink color, I want to make sure that the signage that I create to navigate people to that area, maybe on the front of the basket or maybe hanging over that section, is that magenta color, same color. So the label on the book is pink, the sign is pink. The label on the book says people, the sign says people. And there's a visual representation of what is in that section. So in this case, I put a diverse group of people on the people sign. And signage is really important for young kids. So don't just type the word people and use the alpha characters. Make sure you have pictures on there as well so that they can, again, you're doing this so that kids can more easily find books. You want to make sure that that is why you're doing this and give them the tools they need to then find the books. Okay. We talked about having a little map so people know, or a brochure or a flyer or a bookmark, so that people know where to find your stuff and be prepared to justify what you did or visit about your why you decided to do this. But also you might have to have some conversations regarding why you put a book in a certain section. So whenever I worked in Joplin, we had pages that reshelved the books for us in many instances, and they would bring the book up and go, this isn't where this belongs. This is where this, so you either have to have that conversation of, okay, I'll reconsider it and think about where it is, or you can say, oh, I put it in this space because of this. But those conversations are going to happen with the kids, with the patrons, with pages, if you have pages, with other library staff, and with your board, most likely. Do talk to your board about this before you get started with this process. This is something that you really need to have board input on, and you're going to want to have help. So if you're going to relabel them, you're going to want to have help with that. Sometimes it's just a good idea to say, okay, this is the stack of books. I couldn't decide which genre it's in. Help me decide. And if you have someone else there with you, that can be a good thing if it's something that you struggle with when making those kinds of decisions. So also you can add your subgenres as the need arises. So maybe there's a trend. Someone in our group was mentioning perhaps there's a trolls are popular all of a sudden and you start collecting in that area, but that's not a subgenre that you have. That is a subgenre that you can add. And so then you just add a new section to, I don't know what it would go under at this point, as far as a genre, maybe like nature or something. And then you'd have trolls and probably people. I don't know, are trolls people? But you get it. I don't have all the answers. You get to decide where it will go. Okay, like I mentioned, we have a guidance document that's coming. Look at it for probably in the next, before Christmas, for sure, we'll have a guidance document that we will send out to all of our member libraries and also make available on our website, which will be new and shiny and updated before too long, right, Jason? That'll probably take another year as well. But I did want to hear from you with questions you have, but also to give Kathy and Christine and Diane the opportunity to share their process. Whenever you look for the handout, I did include the references if you want to do some research on your own. So I'm going to stop my screen share. And who would like to go first? How about you, Kathy? You're muted.
There we go. I'll just tell you why I got interested in doing this. I think it's been maybe 4 or 5 years. I went through a process and I got some of those cheap Dollar Tree bins and I put like my series in these boxes. I have like Bears and Bears and Clifford and Lego books and I don't know, all of that kind of stuff. And the kids really liked it. They had a picture of the book and they knew where to go to. And then this summer, for the animal Tails and Tales, I used a bingo card, and I don't know if you can see, it's got little pictures of animals on it. And I was contemplating, I really liked the idea of a bingo card because it would get them kind of searching for books, but I thought, oh, it's going to be such a chore to tell them where to look for a book about a monkey or a lion and stuff. So I had somebody come help me and we went through, and probably a good third to almost a half of my collection is about animals. So I sorted them by farm animals, forest animals. I had a section on cows and cats and dogs, and they loved it. They could go find the picture and the word that said dogs or cats, and they could look at their little card and say, oh, I need a book about a rabbit, and they could go find it by themselves. So, and the mothers liked it too, because they would say, oh, but you need to go find a book about a lion. So they really liked it, and that was a success. So I was sitting on this, dreading putting all those books back in author order. And Tammie sent out this, how to genrify your collection. And I'm like, I want to learn about this, but I did not, I don't know. I just was kind of hesitant because of that part where I have to be subjective and decide what it's about. So as I've started the process, I got some labels. And the first thing I did was I went to my books that are in a series and I thought, well, these don't take any thought. The ones I want to leave in a series, I'm going to label all those. And then I've started on the holiday ones. So I'm taking a little different approach than she did. They're kind of in certain shelf locations. And then, I just put them back. But I'm putting off the hard part of the job for a while. And what I am still looking for, I chose these square labels because I want to have some as much as I can with the front facing, but I put mine close to the spine because I'm hoping to put some kind of colored tape that goes around this and the spine continuously. And that's my goal. I've played around with a few things and I haven't exactly found what I wanted yet. But another thing to mention, if you're thinking about doing this with the collection development grant, you can use stuff on your shelving and your, even some of the labels and stuff might qualify for this grant to help you fund this project. And it's like you said, you can relabel them, but my books still have the E on them. They still have the author, so they still can just go back on the shelf where they are until I get it all figured out. That's it for me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy, for that reminder. You absolutely can use the collection development grant for materials to genrify your collection. That's been okay through Sharon. So thank you for bringing that up. Does anyone have questions for Kathy? Do you think front-facing shelving is better for genrifying or just for picture books? Well, I think front-facing shelving is better for genrifying picture books. So I'm going to kind of combine what you said. I also think it's better for picture books in general. I think as children learn how to read and they better understand how you are cataloging things and organizing them on the shelves, they can better find things. If you plan to genrify your collection for adults or for teens, I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen in nonfiction is kind of already genrified if you think about it. And I've seen that happen in nonfiction collections pretty successfully. And typically, depending on the size of the collection, it's kind of a hybrid. So some of the books will be front facing and some will be spine out. So there's a multitude of ways to do it. Does someone else have another thought, comment, opinion?
Just to piggyback on your hybrid idea, I've worked in libraries where they do have space within the shelving where, you know, books are spine out, but there's a spot for displays. So your little easels, little wire thing. So setting those out, and those can get refilled, and, you know, we all know displays help with circulation. So that's one way to do it.
Absolutely. Sharon tells us that face out means checkout, and I like that. That's a great thing an easy thing to remember. Make sure you have room on your shelves to do that. Thanks, Amy. Okay, Christine, you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm trying to think here. Basically, I just kind of went with you and we did the weeding process, and then I took it a step further and did the shelf by shelf. And my labels are a little bit different. They're kind of more like Kathy's. And then I have a little colored square sticker on there. I was trying to kind of save on some costs with that. But I got little clear bins from Amazon, and they were probably the priciest part. But in measuring the shelves, we have really narrow shelves, so it was difficult to try to find one. So that was a lot of searching, but we found some, and it looks really nice. And even some of our patrons that have been, you know, longtime patrons, they've come in and found books that they've never seen before. So they've been really happy with how appealing it is. So that's been really positive feedback for me. What else? And these same people, they'd always just go straight to our rotation section, and now they're kind of hanging out in the Madison section too. So it's nice they're getting our books checked out more.
That's great. Make sure you put that in your report to your board as well.
I will, yes. One of those people is a board member, so she can support me on that one.
Awesome. Does anyone have questions for Christine? Okay, Diane, would you like to go next?
Sure. How I came into this was a little bit different than the other ladies, just because I was having to go through automation at the same time. So we had a huge weed. So I had a lot of help in that area before even thinking about genrifying. And then after we weeded, I kept seeing the differences in having the shelves, because as soon as we weeded, I set up our shelves, especially in the adult area, to where I always had facing books at the end of every shelf. So I always had something displayed on every shelf. And those started going out like hotcakes instead of just our brand new books that are all, we always have a pretty display for our brand new books. But then I found out that they were finding old favorites that were hidden in the stacks, just like Tammie said, and they love it. And I always have patrons come in now and say, how pretty, of all things, how pretty our books are. So with that, that's when I was like, I've got to get the children's side to look like that. And with teacher friends, they always do it by like the animal or by the person or type of weather or whatever. And that got me thinking and got poor Tammie involved in it when I asked her when we were reading about her opinions on genrifying versus keeping the regular. And we went from there. So I didn't have to do quite so much as the other ladies was having to do all that by myself. SEK came and helped me a ton because we were automating at the same time. And then the next thing is very small library. I'm the only one that's on staff. And so I had to think of prices and how to keep it as cheap as possible. So I did do Dollar Tree baskets to do our frontward facing. But with that came the added thing of they don't fit very well into our small little shelving. So we have as much as we can in them, and some of them, their books are somewhat heavy, and Dollar Tree baskets are not the most stablest. So I have two of them together just for now. But luckily, because of a grant, we're getting new shelving, so we won't have to worry about that as much. But it is a good start off spot. And with our shelving, I did have a little bit of space between, so I can put frontward facing and spine facing in if I needed to. But I have found, of course, that frontward facing rotates a lot more. But when you're limited on space, you got to do what you got to do. And then pictures of what's in each basket is a huge thing. Children love it. And I did also a little different than Christine and Kathy in that I have my spine label, plus I have it up in the right corner. And when I first did it, I did a small little colored dot that was not big enough. It's great on the little spine, but up in the corner, it is not big enough, and kids, they scan, where? I don't see no color. So definitely make sure you get a bigger color, because I had to take all those off to redo them. Learn from my mistakes. I don't know. The other thing, like they've said, it's the hardest part is deciding on books on where to go. Have someone to bounce off of. Tammie, bless her, came down and helped me get started on it, and that helped a ton just to have someone else to bounce off of. And I still emailed her about a couple of books even after she came down and tried to help me. Always reach out. I'm happy to help bounce off of, and I know everybody else in the system is too. I don't know. That's all I can think of.
And if you reach out to multiple people, you may get 4 different answers, and you'll still have to make the decision yourself. So we'll give you input, but you get to make the decision yourself. Does anyone have questions for Diane?
This is Dana from the Howard Library. We share a school district with Moline, and just good job, Diane. We're so excited for you.
Oh, thank you, Dana. We love having Howard. They're awesome.
Has anyone tried this yet in the adult section? Well, I mentioned that some bigger libraries do this with their nonfiction collection, is where I've seen it. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure that someone has done this somewhere. Amy, do you know of any libraries that have done the adult fiction with genres yet? They kind of arrange it like a bookstore. I know that much. But if you do branch out into genrifying a different collection other than picture books, which is what our guidance document is about, you will need to talk to the system so that we can get a common language around genres developed, so that we maintain that continuity across the system, so that we don't have 500 different genres floating around. You can have your own subgenres, but let's get some standardized genres, and that will help whenever we do interlibrary loan. Yep, some call them neighborhoods. That's right. Whenever you get started with this, if you have your shelves, and Diane, I know you do this, I don't know what it looks like right now, but her shelving is such that she has flat top. And so she can display books on top of her shelving. And that's how my shelving was as well. When you get the lower shelving for children, you'll have that space. So keep that in mind. Not only is it good because you don't have kids climbing on the shelf to get to the book, but also because they can see what it is they're looking for. And it gives you this great room on top to do book displays. And so my first thought is, how do I decide what book to put on top? And you know how I decided? I closed my eyes and picked one, and that's what went on top. And that system worked well for me. But after I did it for a while, I started doing really cool things and had a lot of fun with it. So maybe it was all princesses, or maybe it was the rainbow of the color of the books, or you can decide, you know, bicycle, everyone that bicycles, or books about bicycling, or bubbles, or whatever it is that you're interested in, or just really goes along with the theme of what you're presenting in your programming or in summer reading, or there's a variety of ways that you can do book displays to go along with what you're doing with your genres.
I have also used these bins in my juvenile fiction and in my beginning readers. The beginning readers, some of them are so skinny, they get really lost on the shelves. So I put them, I just use the levels that are written on the front of the book. So level ones are there, and you know, you can just fan through them. And then in the juvenile fiction, we have quite a few, like Geronimo Stilton and Magic Treehouse, and the kids like looking through them because they can once again see the front a lot easier.
And if you put Geronimo Stilton level ones beside something else that isn't getting checked out level ones, then hopefully the level one readers will have a broader range to choose from.